needs to be a certain...
I'm going to call Clayton Mitchell.
I'd like to just thank their contribution. It is good to have a debate in the House and actually have some speakers from the government to stand up and speak. So thank you, Mr Bailey. Thank you, Mr Young, for that. I do have to say, though, Mr Bailey, I enjoy the select committee contributions you make, and I have to say that I thought you let yourself down a little bit in the House today, and I thought your comments actually undermined what you were trying to say, because you made the comment of saying that 97% of New Zealand is made up of small and medium-sized businesses, and yet making up such a large amount of our businesses, that should make the government responsible to actually go and make sure that they've got health and safety within those small and medium-sized businesses. So I think you've actually shot yourself in the foot, and it just goes to show that there is sense in that side, but you're just not coming up with solutions, real solutions that are going to affect health and safety in those workplaces. And our supplementary order paper that we're putting through in 100 here is clause 65, is to reduce those numbers of workers from 20 down to 10, all right, to engage a health and safety representative, because we understand that it's a cost to those businesses and we want to make it as cost effective and efficient as we can for businesses. However, if we get the support and get the government to pay for those health and safety representative courses, then we would of course support Labor with theirs, which is to remove that entirely. But I just want to talk about and just take note of our flag, which is New Zealand's first way of recognising those people that have actually lost their lives, and I hope that that is no offence to anybody in the House, because of course this is the flag that represents all people around our wonderful country. I would also like to just take the moment just to say this, to read out, which is the Health and Safety Reform Bill Officials Report. It says, encouraging greater work involvement in health and safety matters. A proven factor in achieving better health and safety performance, all PCBUs must engage and have effective participation practices for their workers relating to health and safety matters. The bill provides for flexibility in the types of practices that may be adopted, allowing for innovation and recognising that different practices will suit different businesses, which I think is fantastic, because I'm actually going to throw you another bone to the National Party over there and say I think Section 3, Part 3 in Section 107 about health and safety representatives may direct unsafe work to cease. And this is about the participation that I think could actually have some real change in helping change the culture within our industries around the country. And so if I just turn to page 81 for those that are following us on section 107, it's got health and safety representatives may direct unsafe workers to cease. And what I like about it, and I've highlighted it in such a manner, that there's a bit of tit for tat, a bit of quid quo going on in this piece of legislation. It starts by saying in part 1, a health and safety representative may direct a worker who is in a work group represented by the representative to cease work if the representative reasonably believes that carrying out the work would expose the worker or any other person to a serious risk to the workers or the other persons. Now, this is where we got some pushback from some of those submitters that were concerned that there was going to be some hidden agenda by health and safety representatives to shut them down and stop production going on. What I like about this section 107, it goes into part 2. Then it says the health and safety representative must not give a direction under subsection 1 unless the matter is not resolved within a reasonable time after solutions about the matter with the PCBU for whom the workers are carrying out work. So it's a bit of a balance. Then it goes on. Section 3 is despite subsection 2, the health and safety representative may direct the worker to cease work without carrying out that consultation if the risk is so serious and immediate or imminent that it is not reasonable to consult before giving the direction. So there's the balance coming back the other way. It's a swinging pendulum. And to balance that out, it says here in subsection 4, the health and safety representative must carry out the consultation as soon as practicable after giving a direction under subsection 3. My point being is there are some very good parts in this bill, and New Zealand First would like to be able to support this bill, but there are some serious flaws, some undersight with actually making this bill work. We have another area of concern, and we've got a supplementary order paper on the table, Mr Chair, to help balance that out, and it is to do with clause 66. And this is to do with work group determination. We have some issues which I'll talk about after I read out the clause. After clause 66, subsection 5 on page 65, we'd like to insert point 6. If a dispute occurs, Mr Chair,
I'm calling Clayton Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr Chair. If a dispute occurs when determining one or more work groups, then WorkSafe, as an independent arbitrator, will determine the work groups within a workplace. Now, in most places, you are going to have an engagement process, which part 3 is about, where you've got participation from the worker and the PCBU, the boss and the worker, however you want to dress it up. I like boss worker, it makes sense to most New Zealanders, sitting down to discuss what's going to constitute a work group. However, in a situation where you've got a large organisation, you've got subcontractors working on the floor, you've got people that are FTEs in the business, and they can't come up with a sound solution to what's going to constitute that work group and how many people are going to constitute that workspace, then we need to have the ability to go to an independent arbitrator to actually determine what is going to constitute that work group. New Zealand First has thought about this, and we have put this clause in there that we again hope get support on the floor for, to ensure that there is no ambiguity around what cause of action you can take if you come up against a problem as such a discussion which has got no end to it. It's going around and around. And we don't believe that the PCBU, the boss of the organisation, should be forced to do something that they would otherwise not think is fair and reasonable, or reasonable and practicable, and conversely, on the shoes on the other foot, with the workers feeling the same way. We need to have that engagement from WorkSafe to be an independent arbitrator to allow that to happen. Again, I want to go back to part 3, 65AA, which we see as being fundamental to help the ever-increasing costs of compliance in workplaces around this country, particularly on small and medium-sized businesses, to ensure that if you want a real bottom-up engagement, the change of culture is going to come from those health and safety representatives, and let's not make the barrier to that become a cost issue. This is where this government needs to step up and say, we'll do it. Leave it to us, we'll cover the cost. There should be absolutely no person in this country that shouldn't have the ability to be able to get health and safety training. And again, if you're a work group, a lawyer's firm, and there's only 3 of you in that firm, what would be wrong sitting around the table and saying, would you like to go and do the health and safety course? It would be great to have a representative and to do that. And to know that you're going to be better off for it, and again, you can pass that information on to even family members that might not be in law, in the law side of things, that might be in some aspect. But real training from the bottom up absolutely is the key to getting this new legislation to work. The engagement process that we talked about earlier on in part 1 that New Zealand First brings to the table is a 3-pronged spear, where you've got to have participation from the workers, you've got to have engagement and an understanding from the PCBU, from the worker, from the employer, as well as making sure that the legislation is funded adequately to ensure that labour enforcement have got the right tools in the toolbox to ensure that these practices are actually taking place in all of those workplaces. I'd just like to finish off, and I really would like to say how good it was yesterday to have the Honourable Michael Woodhouse having this good engagement with us and to hearing his comments. And I would like to ask about what is going to be constituting hazardous, not workspaces, but hazardous implements, not goods and services, but we need to get some sort of clarity around high-risk plant is what I'm trying to think of, Mr Chair. And that's going to come up later on, because we are concerned that high-risk plant, if they're going to involve commercial kitchens, will have some serious implications later on, but I'll talk to that when it comes up in part 4. Thank you, Mr Chair.